As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, as wonderful an attorney as I am, and as good as Stormy is at whatever it is he does, please do note that anything said in our podcasts are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, Stormy Andrews, founder of Yokel Local Marketing, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome back to Finances, the Other F Word. And today on the podcast, we're going to talk about probably the most fucking boring subject we've ever. Thank you for breaking up that. We're going to talk about taxes and the tax changes that you have seen probably on your taxes that you filed this year. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they changed and how it's relative to you. So I'm not, first of all, let me put a disclaimer to cover my ass. I am a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. I am not a CPA, which is a certified public accountant. So if you listen to this podcast and you have questions, feel free to forward them to your accountant. Do not send me any questions on taxes. The taxes were part of the CFP exam and it fucking blew. I hated that part. It was awful. And all the CPAs out there, I don't know how you do it because the tax code is fucked up and boring as balls.
Can they send their questions to me?
Don't.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, you guys take the questions.
Yeah, you can send all the questions you want to me, but I won't answer any of them.
I think we should have a session where we do a question and answer of anything that they ask. Yeah, I think that would be good. But hopefully the questions won't be on taxes because, I mean, who really gives a shit? But this is important for you guys to know. And so as I'm sitting here and I'm getting ready to talk about very boring stuff, my mind is already trying to run away and think about, music or something. And I keep thinking of DJ Quick when he paired up with Tony, Let's Get Down.
Tony does it again.
Yeah. And he
feel
was like,
good.
Oh, it's the jam. No, but when he talks about, he's like, because I come stronger than the IRS whenever you done got delinquent on your taxes. I'm like, hey, I love DJ Quick. I met him. Nice guy. Safe and Sound. One of my favorite CDs. And then I think the Beatles sang about something tax. And then Scorpions had a song called Taxman Woman off of Under the Sun Under the Sun, something like that.
You know who should have had a tax song?
Who?
Wesley Snipes.
Oh, I get it. That's a joke. Or Willie Nelson.
Or Willie
Nelson. Or MC Hammer, I guess, too.
Oh, yeah.
Or who?
Lauren Hill.
Lauren Hill, she went to jail for taxes?
Yes.
Oh,
did she go to jail or did she just get?
She went to jail.
Oh.
Well, you can
she
only
could have had one too.
You can only go to jail if it's tax fraud.
Oh.
Yeah,
she
like
went to jail for something, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's the thing, goes back to shitty business managers, right? So, all right, so let's get into this subject real quickly. So we're going to talk about three major topics today. That's going to try to break down how taxes work in a very high level for you so that you can understand the context of the tax changes. One of them is going to be above the line deductions. The other one is going to be the changes to personal exemptions and standard deductions that came out for 2018. And the other one is going to be the changes in the corporate tax sector. And this is going to be a really big deal because it really helped out the corporate tax sector. The corporate sector really got a big hand.
Shock.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of the conversations that were coming out saying that the tax code really didn't benefit the little guy, that they did benefit the 1%. And on one hand, it actually helped the little guy. On the other hand, it much, much more helped the big corporation. So we'll talk about that. So one of the things, when we're talking about above the line deduction, so when you have your income, let's say you make $100,000 a year, that's your gross income. And then you are allowed to take deductions off that are dollar for dollar that decrease your income. So if you have $5,000 in above line deductions, then your income in the eyes of the IRS is $95,000. That's when an above the line deduction is. It's dollar for dollar. Well, one of the big changes that they did was they took off alimony. And so I started thinking about all of these people that had tons of money and movie stars and musicians that were paying alimony and how it used to be let's say that you and I were married, Stormy. Okay. And I divorced you. Okay. And so I had to pay you alimony because, I got it like that.
You're a baller. I'll take
right.
it.
And I'm making it hail right now. And so how it would normally work is that let's say I paid you $10,000 a year in alimony. I would get to write off $10,000 dollar for dollar off of my taxes. So again, if I make $100,000, then $10,000 of it goes to you. So my taxable income's only $90,000. You would then have to claim that $10,000 as income.
Oh, got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, but because the IRS is going to get their money somehow. So if they're giving me a break, they're charging you. But usually the receiver of an alimony payment is in a lower tax bracket. So the misconception with the way taxes work is everybody says if they say, I'm in the 25% tax bracket. Well, no, you're not. You might have an effective tax bracket of 25%, but the way that the tax brackets are actually set up is that your first portion of your income is actually not taxed or is taxed very low. And then it goes up by stair steps. And I'm looking through my things to find the most recent. Yeah, so this is the most recent income tax bracket. So just give you kind of an example. For zero money in, it would be 10%, which is kind of stupid because there's no money coming in. But up
so
to...
they can take 10% of my nothing? Because they fucking will.
Yeah, but I mean...
That's good to know. Yeah.
But I mean, it's zero. But from there, it's stair steps. And so what starts happening is that as you move through... like once you get between, $9,000 and $9,526, call it, to $38,699, you're actually stepping to the 12% tax bracket. So it's not 100% of my $100,000 is not going to be taxed at 25%. The first, portion of it's going to be taxed at 12, and then the next portion of it is going to be taxed at 22% until you get to the 100,000. So when you talk about an effective tax rate, you talk about all of your tax rates and your tax brackets actually come up to. And this is going to be important when we talk about the corporate tax rate. And so how it used to be is that you had two things you could deduct. You could deduct a personal exemption, which is just basically the cost of you. And then you could have a standard deduction. And so what would happen is that people who had mortgages were able to itemize and write off some extra stuff. And usually the reason why they could do that is because the mortgage interest that they earned put them over the amount of their standard deduction and their personal exemption together. So what happened in the 2018 tax code is that they did away completely with the personal exemption, but they raised the standard deduction to higher. So you had a personal exemption and you had a standard deduction. So me, I have no kids. I'm not married. This sounds like a single dad. Just saying, what's up, baby? You like me? Call me. You guys remember those old television commercials where it was like the 1-800, or well, it wasn't 800. It was like $3.99 a minute or something. And they were like, oh, are you alone on a insert date here? It doesn't really matter. But so, sorry, got off on a little tangent there. But all of a sudden I was reminiscent of that. So when you add your personal deduction and your standard deduction in my situation prior to these tax changes, it would have meant that I could have had basically a head start on my taxes of $10,000 something where they would have excluded it from taxes. But the personal exemption is now gone. And you used to also, so Zoe, you have kids. So you were able to write off for both of your dependent children, actually maybe three of them.
Well, actually, I got one and my ex-husband got one.
Okay. All right. So, but there was exemptions there to be had. Mm-hmm. And so if you had a large family, you could have multiple exemptions, which would help really pad your tax bill. But now they've done away with that. And so now it's just a standard deduction. So, but the standard deduction went up from where it was to, in my same situation, it was over $12,000, which means that for me, I got a bonus of $2,000 that I could have taken off my taxes like right out the gate where I didn't have to worry about paying it on it, which sounds really awesome.
Sure.
The problem is that now no triggering event to allow me to itemize like mortgage interest does not exist, so I can't really do anything above that at all. So you can't. That's it. Like you get your $12,000 standard deduction, and there's a couple of things you can write off, but for the most cases, they just said, hey, all the stuff that we allowed you to itemize, being that you listed them and we took off for you that would help lower your tax bill, you're fucked. Because if you can't be over the $12,000, then there's nothing else you can write off. But if you have a huge house with a huge mortgage, then you would qualify and you would still be able to itemize some things. Yeah. The important thing about that, though, is that it used to be people would do, and this is how it's going to affect a lot of our listeners. Back in the day, people used to want to consolidate debt using home equity lines or loans because it was tax deductible and because the interest rate was typically lower. Well, they've eliminated allowing you to write off the home equity lines and loans as a write-off. And so that means that really there's no benefit right now in that aspect of doing a home equity line or loan. But that was the great thing for homeowners, is that it allowed them to consolidate high interest debt and be able to write off the interest that they were accrued on it. But that's now gone too. So that was pretty interesting. Then, of course, we had, Obamacare. They took away the penalty. So now you don't have to have Obamacare and you won't get hit with the penalty. And that was kind of a whole thing. Like I said, they changed the alimony, which kind of sucks. But now we would expect alimony payments to start going down because there's no benefit for the payer. Because if you make a ton of money and you have to pay alimony, it's not a good deal because you're paying a ton of money, but it's an above the line deduction. It's a very coveted deduction. It comes dollar for dollar, and it would take the edge off. But now, since that's gone, I'm assuming that alimony payments might end up going down.
But aren't alimony payments set by the courts?
They are, and I believe they're set by the assets or the style of living or the money making potential of the payer. I'm not really sure. Okay. Yeah, but hopefully it'll be adjusted for it because, I mean, that's, if you're paying somebody, $120,000 a year, and you can't write off any of it, that's going to be a greater chunk of your overall income. Oh, right. Yeah, so it's gonna affect the payer a lot more than before because it's not the tax benefit is not actually there. So, and then one of the other changes, if you live in a state like California is our next door neighbor, if you live in a state that has state tax, they have taken, it used to be, so you had the ability to write off, like here in Nevada, another reason why our state rocks is that we have no state tax. And we have Vegas. I mean, come on. But what you could do as an individual filer is you could write off, like if you're in California, you could write off the taxes that California as a state charges you on your taxes, right, as an above the line deduction.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
But Stormy's like, sure, right, and but there was no cap. So if you paid $100,000 in state taxes, you could write it off. But now they've taken that to $10,000
max.
$10,000 cap max. So for a lot of places that are in states where they have, they're applicable to state tax, and I think the only 4 states that don't have state tax is Nevada, Washington, Texas, and Florida, right? Does that sound right? I think that's right.
That works for me.
Yeah, let's just say yeah.
Yeah. So, but every other state has taxes associated with it. So that was kind of a big deal, that change. And then when we talked a little bit about the home equity lines and loans and the interest and those types of things. So that's kind of an overall as far as when you're talking about from an individual tax statement, how it affects you. But this is the big one. So when the tax changes came out, they were talking about how it didn't help the little guy, it didn't help the 99%. And on the surface, it looks like it does benefit kind of for the little guy because your deduction went higher. And if you were never able to itemize before, then you basically doubled your deduction. That's a huge deal. But the corporate tax rate, they simplified them and they took it to a flat corporate rate of 21%. Okay. So the corporate tax rate before was stair-stepped, just as the individual tax brackets were before that we talked about. And if you took all of those stair steps and you averaged them together, those tax brackets where it used to be in 2017 for the corporate taxes, the mean, and not a weighted percentage, but the mean of that was 31.875. So tax rate. Okay. If you just took an average of all of those, and so basically, if you take the average between all the stair steps of 38.75 and you lower it to a flat 21%, then you have your huge companies like Apple and Amazon who now pay significantly less taxes than they did before.
Right.
And in most cases, they can get rid of the 21% tax bracket by having deductions and write-offs and doing certain things that you can put within your corporation where you can actually get it down to 0%.
That's not a bad deal.
Well, yeah, if you're
I want to get on that. How can I do it?
You got to be one. You got to be one of the 1%, Stormy.
Got to be the 1% in order to get the zero tax rate.
Right. Well, and the thing is that they were saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. We have a lot of companies, American companies like Apple and Amazon, who have money abroad that they don't want to bring over here because of the event that it's going to be taxable, and the global average tax rate is 25%. So this tax plan said, hey, we're going to make it 21%, and that way everybody's going to bring their money back. But if you're Apple and it's the first time, Stormy, you're bringing your money from overseas because you've been harboring it there because you didn't want to pay taxes on it,
right?
Then they're going to give you a special rate of 15.5%. So the average American, a 99%er, right, like us, our tax bracket is going to be anywhere between 20 to 25% effective tax bracket. But if you're a corporation who has billions and millions of dollars held abroad and you want to bring it back into this country, 15.5%, that's what we're going to do for you. Now, this is my thing. So I know that they say that their thing is that it's going to bring the money back to the United States, and I don't know if it's going to encourage them to get staffing here or encourage them to, I don't know, invest in America or whatever the case is. But there's a lot of reasons why people have money abroad. Sometimes it's return. Sometimes it's the fact that the investments overseas are structured differently and they have hedging or a leverage that we can't get here in the United States. And so I don't necessarily think that that money's going to come flooding back in. And it really surprised me because as I'm going through, like I said, individual tax rates, it does look like it helped us. But on the corporate side, I mean, the bottom line is that the 1% is still paying significantly less than, Joe Schmo off the street.
So let me ask you a question. If it's a tax break for the little guy, a tax break for the 1%, wouldn't that cause some sort of a deficit in terms of?
Well, it's not that it's a tax break for the little guy. It's a simplification.
Okay.
But so basically we're the lower end is still carrying it. We're still
carrying the weight.
We're still carrying the weight.
Interesting.
Right? But they're giving the tax break to the corporations because it's a whole trickle down theory, like how Reaganomics had, where we're going to put all the money up to the 1%ers and they're going to create all these jobs and they're going to do all this kind of stuff. But let's keep it 100. If I'm an owner of a big company, okay, and I can bring my money back to America at 15.5%, introductory rate coming back in, but I can still get cheaper labor in Mexico.
Right.
Why would I go, wow, America gave me this break to bring my money back. Why would I still employ Americans that have unions and that it costs more money instead of still having employees in, maybe India or something like that? So I don't necessarily know if that's the effect it's going to have. I really hope that it does. But I really don't see it happening because when it comes down to it, it's all about the numbers. So if I'm building anything like Apple with China, that's where they build all their iPhones, and the labor in China is so much better and they have less benefits and they don't have any type of unionization at all.
Those children have tiny hands.
Tiny hands for components. But you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just, so it was just, I don't know, it's just fascinating. And taxes, I know, is not a very sexy topic by any means, but it's something that you guys got to know about, and you need to understand how it affects you, and you need to understand when you're hearing headlines where people talk about, this affects us or this doesn't affect us, you need to be able to see through the bullshit because it's very important, because you don't want people to pull the wool over your eyes and put you in a situation where you think that something's great and it's awful, or something's awful and it's actually really good for you.
Right.
And I'm assuming that with the way the government is structured now, we'll probably continue to see the same tax code going through the year of 2019, and then maybe time will tell. Maybe the corporations will bring back over the money with the benefit of the 15.5 introductory rate on the taxes, and maybe it will go ahead and re.
It's interesting. Okay. So a couple of years ago, they did this. experiment in the state of Kansas.
Okay.
I don't know if you looked at it, but they, the trickle-down economic theory where they dramatically lowered the corporate tax structure.
Okay.
And it decimated their economy, decimated the state of Kansas. Maybe it was Missouri, but I believe it was Kansas.
Really?
Yeah, so you should look into that. That would be they spoke over my head on lots of things, but it got so bad that the people said, listen, we've got to go back, change the laws to raise our taxes. Because they were decimating schools, decimating just killing everything because the money didn't come back and they were just running these huge deficits, and it was pretty darn bad. And that was something that I read. You would know the topic more than I, but listening to some of the, so-called tax experts, they're like, hey, we've done this before. We did it in Kansas. The money didn't come back. So now we're just going to do it on a larger scale.
And that's interesting. And the reason why, and if I sound cynical on the whole, we're all business owners on this podcast. And if I sound cynical about, getting the tax breaks to the corporation, it's because, we did another episode on our podcast, look it up, where we talk exclusively about 2008 and all of our stories that happened during 2008 and what happened when the Fed started lowering interest rates to try to, just give a quick refresher, the Fed lowers interest rates when they want to pump more money in the economy, because the belief is that if the interest rates are lower, people will go to the bank and they will take out more debt to either consolidate debt or buy homes or buy, jet skis or something like that. So when we were in the financial crisis at the height of it and the Fed is just cutting interest rates like crazy, what ended up happening, and then there was some stimulus in there to the banking system, some took it, some didn't, and I'm not an expert on that by any means. But what ended up happening is that the bank sat on all this fucking money. They sat on this fucking money, and we are going down the tube, and people are losing their jobs, and it's just this whole big ripple effect, and the government stepping in to help the banks to try to keep them propped up, because if the banks would have failed, we would have been fucked. There's no way around it. And again, greed pigs, they did not do what they were supposed to do. And so there was just rate cutting, and then nothing ever came out of it. And so when we talk about these corporations being able to bring back, all of this money and put it here in America, they might put some of it into infrastructure for their businesses, which might, generate some jobs and that type of stuff. But
Sure.
The bottom line is everything's getting automated. And in no way, shape, or form, if the money comes back from overseas, then, balance sheets, well, they'll kind of look the same. But we would expect that there would be, a bump in their stock price and things like that. But probably 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen is they're going to sit on it. They're going to take the tax savings. They're going to bank that shit.
Right.
They're not going to give it back to any of the workers or any of the 9%. And I'm not saying give it to us. I'm saying, have people work for it. And it just drives me absolutely crazy. And the thought that, and there was another experiment, and I can't even remember where I heard it, probably in KNPR, where there was like people, blind tests, so people didn't see each other. I don't know if that's what blind study means, but they didn't see each other. Not that they were actually blind, but you know what I'm saying. By the way, you can get an extra standard deduction, I think $1,000 or $1,500 on it if you have somebody in your home that is blind and you're taking care of them. Good segue. Thanks, Mel. High five to me. That was awesome. Where they gave them, hey, like, we're going to give you an envelope and, it has $5 in it. All right. So you don't know how much money's in it. You open the envelope and it's like, you have the option to give somebody you don't know $2, right, and help them out, or you can keep all of it. And so the people who got $5, $10, $15, they would give, like, oh yeah, I'll give, it's found money, right? You just gave me $5. Here's, $2
Right.
to this person I don't know, and vice versa. But what happened is the more money that they put in the envelopes, the less people gave. And so you would think that, there's this whole conversation, and Vince, I could really talk about this, but, you have this whole conversation about, people who make more, they give generously. Well, not as a percentage of their income.
Right.
For us, like, there was some big company that part of the tax credit, gave their employees $1,000, and there was a whole big stink about it. And see, this tax savings works. Okay, so $1,000 to most people is like, hell yeah, I want $1,000. To the ratio that they got in tax breaks is nothing, and they got a tax break for the $1,000 that they gave to their employees. So this whole bullshit where the corporation comes in and they gave everybody $1,000 is ridiculous. So when you look at mega, Warren Buffett's and, those types of people, Bill Gates, and Bill Gates has done wonderful things in Washington State, and he's just a hero there. But typically, for most people who are in the 1% or even the 1% of the 1%, their ratio of charitable giving to somebody who is normal is completely skewed. So they do all these wonderful things. We hear the dollar amounts and we go, holy crap, what a generous soul. But in actuality, a lot of times, if you give 10% to, a church or any type of nonprofit, it's actually more percentage-wise that you're giving of your income than these really, really rich elite people. Right. And something about the more money you make, just the less you give back. And that fascinates me, and I don't know why. And I guess that whole psychology, along with everything else that I saw in 2008, just makes me feel like they're not going to do anything. And I hope I eat my words. I hope I'm wrong. I hope corporations step up and do wonderful things and give back to the workers and help kind of bring the middle class back. But I got to be honest with you, I just don't see it happening.
I'm with you. It's not going to happen. And I would love to eat my words also, but it's not to the scale that basically it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I wonder why that is, because wasn't the American dream to be middle class? That was the American dream, right? And I don't know if it's because we came out of the Great Depression, starting in like the late 20s and, to what, 34, I think the Depression went, or can't remember when we went into World War I at what, 41? Or is that World War II?
Yeah.
No, I think.
The Great Depression?
The Great Depression was the end of the 20s, early, like the very end of the 20s and mostly in the 30s.
Right.
And I don't know if that became the gold standards is that you were going to fight yourself out of the Great Depression into the middle class. But that was the American dream, was just to be middle class. And now it's like we can't even, a lot of people can't even get to middle class. And it's very frustrating as an advisor to see that happen. So, yeah, boo on the corporate tax rates, the way that they're structured. And like I said, I know that was a boring topic, but you really need to understand this, you guys, because you need to make sure that when these changes are coming through, you know how to vote. And I don't care how you vote. I just want you to vote informed, and I want you to understand the things that are really happening, because the middle class is disappearing, and it's a tragedy. And that's really all I got to say about that. Any other songs just to lighten this mood, because this was a horrible conversation to have? Any other songs you guys can think of that has to do with taxes?
Oh,
No,
you mentioned the Beatles, the Tax Man already, right?
Yeah, and I've actually never heard that song. What's like a lyric of the song?
The Tax Man.
Really, that's it?
Yeah, I can't really
Well,
remember. It is about the Tax Man. I can't remember how it goes, but yeah, put it on the playlist.
All right. Well, then I'll have to listen to it.
Cheap Trick. Taxman, Mr. Thief, 1977.
I've never heard that song either.
Johnny Cash, After Taxes, 1978.
And that was when, in the 70s, that was when inflation was crazy and they had the lines at the gas pumps and those types of things, Oh,
check this out. Billboard has tax day playlists, 31 songs to get you through the tax day.
Are they all about taxes, or some of them about like trying not to hang yourself?
Let's see. They got Sharon Jones, What If We All Stop Paying Our Taxes? I Need a Dollar by, I can't pronounce the name.
Is there, I Got Friends in Low Places.
Money
I feel like that should be
Pink
a tax.
Floyd.
Yeah, Money, of course.
Luxury Tax.
And then there's Money by the
By Rick
OJs.
Ross.
Money.
Money.
That's a great song.
Yeah, except for it's forever tainted by Trump now, because he used that for his Apprentice show.
I've never seen
Money,
Apprentice.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Great. OJs are a fantastic group.
Dire Straits, Money for Nothing.
Oh,
Yeah.
good song.
So there you go.
Yeah. So basically, just we're going to give you a little music sandwiched in between all of that tax talk. But anyway, so again, if you have any questions on that, my disclaimer, I am not a CPA. I am not giving you tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor for any taxes, or apparently Stormy or Zoe are going to field any tax questions you have.
No, we'll just look at them and Laugh.
You know what?
Don't take their answers to the bank, is what I'm
don't,
saying.
yeah.
There's one song that we forgot. I've got to take us back.
What?
Oh.
Notorious B.I.G.
Oh, he's
Mo Money.
Mo Problems.
Oh, got to have that
Oh,
one.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so Stormy's taking us back to a prior podcast where we did a whole Tupac and Biggie standoff, and Tupac clearly won.
No.
Biggie. Go on, do it again. Go on, Stormy.
Anyway, we hope the list on Spotify helps you guys. And then, of course, we want to talk real quick about the release of Finance is the Other F Word. It is on sale at Amazon.com right now. You can also go to Hot Moon Gear and click on the link, and it'll take you right to Amazon's page. And lots of cool stuff, lots of cartoons, funny stuff, a little bit of blue humor. If you like the podcast, you'll dig the book for sure.
Why don't you show a picture of the book?
Let me show a picture of the book. I don't know if you can podcast listeners see it. Can you see it? It's right there.
Well, podcast listeners can, but the people watching us live can. Back it up a little bit. There you go.
I feel like on Wayne's World where they did I'm probably the only Wayne's World nerd in here, but all right. Well, until next time, thank you for sitting through the boring tax one, and we will circle back and we will see you again.
Cheerio.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you like us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.